You're listening to someone speak, right? Maybe it's a dense lecture, or maybe it's a conversation in a language you're actually trying to learn.
Right, or even just a really technical briefing at work.
Exactly. And you understand every single word. I mean, you're nodding along, you're completely in the zone, but the exact second they turn to you and ask a question, total blank, your brain entirely freezes. It's that universal, deer in the headlights feeling.
It really is.
The words are in there somewhere, but the bridge to actually getting them out of your mouth is just totally blocked. You can feel the heat rising in your cheeks. The awkward silence is like stretching out, and you're just paralyzed.
It's a brutal feeling, and it happens to almost everyone.
Oh, for sure.
You go from feeling completely competent as a passive listener to entirely helpless as an active speaker in, like, roughly half a second.
Yeah, it's so fast.
And the mechanics behind that specific freeze response tell us an enormous amount about the massive gap between how the human brain processes incoming information and how it struggles to produce outgoing information on the spot.
So today's deep dive is all about decoding that freeze. We're pulling from a source curriculum that's designed for a 30-day English fluency challenge. And specifically, we're zeroing in on their Day 2 materials, where the instructors tackle this brutal transition from passive studying to active speaking.
Right.
But, this isn't just about learning English. We're trying to extract the underlying strategies these instructors use to break through conversational barriers.
Right.
Because the psychology here, it applies to learning almost any complex skill where you have to perform under pressure.
Yeah, the instructors in this curriculum are really laser-focused on moving learners away from just safely absorbing vocabulary in a quiet room.
Right, it's a safe zone.
Exactly. They want to push them out into the messy, unpredictable world of actual conversation. So Day 2 of their challenge is where they confront the psychology of that freeze directly.
Okay, so to fix the freeze, we first have to figure out what the brain is actually doing during that horrible, awkward silence.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Right. And the instructors call the main culprit the mental translation trap.
I love that term.
It's so accurate. It's this exhausting habit of overthinking every single grammar rule and manually translating words in your head one by one before letting a single sound escape your lips.
Which is just a ton of work.
It is. And naturally, it results in this incredibly slow, robotic, hesitant speech pattern.
Because it creates a massive cognitive bottleneck.
Yeah.
I mean, your brain only has a finite amount of working memory available at any given millisecond.
Right.
If you're dedicating a huge chunk of that processing power to, cross-referencing a grammar textbook in your head, and then scanning a mental dictionary to convert a word from your native language into your target language, you're maxing out your cognitive load.
You're completely overloaded.
You have almost zero bandwidth left to actually articulate the sound, let alone read the room or, monitor your tone or maintain eye contact with the person standing right in front of you.
It's just like trying to stream a 4K video on an old dial-up internet connection.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You know that screeching modem sound followed by just staring at a spinning loading wheel?
The buffering wheel of death.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your brain is constantly buffering. It's running this massive, heavy background translation software instead of just streaming the thought directly. You're literally buffering your own sentences.
Yeah, you're trying to download the grammar rules and upload the vocabulary simultaneously on just a terrible connection.
So how do we upgrade the connection? Because the solution they propose in the text is surprisingly low-tech.
It really is. It's almost entirely physical.
Physical.
Yeah, you have to force yourself to speak out loud. The friction of the physical act actively phase the translation trap over time until a brain is essentially forced to start thinking in the target language automatically.
Which, that sounds a bit like fake it until you make it.
A little bit, yeah.
But there's a fascinating twist they highlight regarding how we can actually speed up that adaptation.
Yeah.
And it centers entirely on emotion.
This was such an interesting part of the source.
Right. There's a moment in the transcript where one instructor asks the other what she's doing for the weekend. And instead of giving a stiff textbook response, she talks about something she genuinely loves. She mentions meeting up with a close friend and grabbing lunch at a brand new restaurant in town that has top-notch food.
Right.
And the other instructor immediately points out how effortlessly the English flowed during that specific answer.
The underlying psychology there is really profound. When she speaks from the heart about personal enjoyment, like the anticipation of seeing a close friend or the sensory expectation of top-notch food, she's bypassing the mental translation process entirely.
But wait, I have to ask. How does simply being excited about lunch short-circuit the buffering? Because if I'm excited about lunch but I don't know the vocabulary, I'm still going to freeze up, aren't I?
See, emotion is tied directly to the concept itself, not to the linguistic label we attach to it.
Okay.
When you're excited about a new restaurant, you're accessing the feeling directly. You aren't consciously thinking, I must construct a future tense sentence with a dependent clause about culinary experiences.
Right. Nobody thinks like that.
Exactly. You're just eager to share a feeling. The urgency of the emotion overrides the perfectionism of the translation trap.
Wow.
The desire to connect simply becomes louder than the fear of making a grammatical error.
Okay, I totally get how enthusiasm pushes you past the fear of speaking.
Yeah.
But enthusiasm alone doesn't put your verbs in the right tense. I mean, you can be incredibly passionate and still sound completely incoherent.
Very true.
So how do we get the actual words right without triggering that mental loading wheel all over again?
Which brings us to the second major hurdle the instructors tackle in the material. They call it the yesterday trap.
Oh, the accidental present tense.
Yes.
The text mentions how learners will constantly and accidentally say things like, yesterday I study, I watch, or I eat. They're talking about the past, but using present tense verbs.
It's super common.
And this is where I get really skeptical, because if the goal is to avoid the mental translation trap, isn't the fix here just locking yourself in a room and drilling flashcards?
That's what most people think.
Are we just supposed to memorize the rules of the past tense and, like, pound irregular verbs like ate and went into our heads until it hurts?
That's the default instinct for almost every adult learner. And according to this methodology, it's the exact wrong approach.
Really?
Yeah. Rote memorization of abstract rules just adds more bloatware to your brain's background processing.
More loading wheels.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're trying to remember whether a verb is regular or irregular while someone is standing there waiting for you to finish your sentence, you're going to freeze.
So what's the alternative?
The solution isn't memorizing rules. It's practicing the completed phrase out loud in context.
Meaning, I shouldn't just study the isolated word ate.
Right. They explicitly guide the learner to say the full correct sentence out loud as one unit. So instead of just ate, you say, yesterday, I studied English and watched a video.
Ah, okay.
It's context over rules. If you memorize the rule that yesterday requires the past tense, and that the past tense of eat is ate, you're giving your brain 3 separate computational steps to perform in real time.
Which takes too long.
But if you practice the entire phrase, yesterday I studied, as a single unbroken block.
My brain starts to treat it as one giant piece of vocabulary instead of an assembly project.
Yes.
It's like reaching into a bucket of Legos.
Yeah.
Instead of pulling out individual bricks and trying to, build a car while someone watches me.
Which is stressful.
Super stressful. I'm just pulling out a pre-assembled Lego car.
Exactly. You aren't building the sentence from scratch. You're just recalling a complete thought.
This ties perfectly into how they handle real-life situations later in the curriculum. They lean heavily on what I'd call prepackaged scripts.
Yes, the role plays.
Right. They run through these highly specific role-play scenarios, like shopping for clothes in New York. The shop assistant says, "How can I help you today?" And the response they teach isn't a vocabulary list. It's the full script.
Yeah.
"I'm looking for a blue t-shirt in a medium size. Where's the fitting room?" And then the programmed response is, "Right over there on the left."
Look at the structure of the second scenario they provide, getting lost in a busy city.
Right.
The learner is taught a very specific block of text. I'm trying to find the nearest train station. And the response is, go straight for 2 blocks, then take a left.
If you use these exact phrases, high-stress situations like shopping in a foreign country or asking a stranger for directions become completely stress-free.
Because you're relying on prepackaged scripts rather than constructing sentences piece by piece.
It makes so much sense.
Think about how we operate in our native languages.
Mm.
When you walk into a coffee shop, you don't actively invent a novel grammatical structure to order a latte.
No, of course not.
You use a script you've used 1,000 times before.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? Good. Can I get a large latte, please? It's a linguistic dance we do without thinking.
Right.
By handing learners these specific high-utility scripts, the instructors give them a bypass valve for the translation trap. You don't translate, "I'm trying to find the nearest train station." You just deploy the script.
Having the scripts is obviously incredibly useful. But knowing a script in your head and actually having the confidence to open your mouth and deploy it to a stranger in the real world.
Two very different things.
Completely different beasts. And this is where the curriculum shifts into these 5 golden fluency tips for day 2 progress.
Right.
And what's really interesting is that these aren't grammar rules at all. They're entirely focused on psychology and physiology.
Yeah, they act as the behavioral scaffolding for everything we've talked about so far. And the physical side of this is fascinating.
Yeah, let's get into the first tip.
They emphasize consistency, specifically speaking for just 5 minutes every single day. But they don't call it studying.
What do they call it?
They call it building mouth muscle memory.
That phrase completely stuck with me. Mouth muscle memory. It totally reframes the process.
It really does.
It takes it out of the intellect and turns it into physical training.
Literally physical training.
Yeah.
You know, vocal cords, your tongue, your lips, your jaw. These are complex muscle groups that have to get used to making entirely new shapes and unfamiliar sounds.
Right, because you're moving your mouth in new ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some languages require you to position your tongue in ways you've never done in your entire life. It's no different than an athlete drilling a tennis serve or a musician running scales until their fingers bleed.
Wow, yeah.
The 5 minutes a day isn't for your brain to remember the words. It's to physically condition your articulatory system so it can produce those specific sounds without hesitation.
You're putting the burden on the body instead of the brain.
Exactly.
Which explains another tip they have, the third one, which is all about speed. Deploy immediately.
Right.
The second you learn a new phrase, use it in a text message or say it out loud right then and there.
Because information degrades rapidly.
Yeah.
If you learn the script for finding the train station but don't physically say it out loud, it stays parked in your passive knowledge.
It just sits there.
By deploying it immediately, you move it from short-term cognitive memory into that active physical muscle memory pathway we just discussed.
So that covers the physical mechanics, but the psychological blockers are just as intense.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to their second tip. The instructors tackle the fear of judgment head on. They have this rule. Real people respect learners.
I love that one.
They stress that you should never worry about people laughing at your mistakes because true friends will always support your growth.
Which directly attacks the anxiety causing the initial freeze.
Right.
Because the freeze, at its core, is almost always a fear response. Your brain detects a social threat, the threat of looking stupid,
right,
and it shuts down non-essential functions.
It really does feel like a threat response.
If you reframe the environment, if you remind yourself that the person listening likely just wants to communicate and isn't, grading your grammar, it radically lowers the stakes.
It turns down the volume on that harsh internal critic.
Exactly. That critic that demands absolute perfection before you're allowed to speak.
And that internal critic gets even louder when we look at other people. Which brings up their fourth tip, a crucial point about comparison.
Yeah.
The rule is to compare yourself only to yesterday. Focus entirely on your own daily progress, not how fast someone else speaks.
This is so important.
And this feels especially relevant today when you can, scroll social media and watch a 20-year-old effortlessly switch between 6 languages on video. It makes your 5 minutes of struggling with the past tense feel completely pointless.
It's the ultimate antidote to discouragement. The illusion of effortless fluency online completely hides the messy reality of the learning process.
It totally does.
Fluency isn't a switch that suddenly flips. It's a painfully incremental accumulation of competence. Measuring yourself against a native speaker or an internet polyglot is just a recipe for quitting.
Right.
But if you only measure against your past self, the trajectory of growth becomes visible, which keeps you going.
Okay, so I'm fully on board with the physical training and managing the anxiety. But there's one tip, the fifth one, that honestly made me stop and push back.
Ooh. Which one?
They say, think in simple concepts.
Ah, yes.
Keep your thoughts direct and basic rather than attempting massive, complex sentences. Now, I have to argue with this.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I'm an adult learning a language or, a professional trying to master a new coding framework, my thoughts are naturally complex. I have nuance I want to express.
Sure.
By restricting ourselves to simple concepts, aren't we just severely limiting our intelligence? It feels incredibly frustrating, like I'm forcing myself to sound like a toddler.
It feels limiting because it is, temporarily.
Temporarily.
Yeah, it's a very natural frustration, often called the ego hit of language learning.
Right.
You want your verbal output to match your internal intellect.
Exactly.
But keeping things simple isn't the end goal. It's the mandatory foundational step required to prevent the freeze.
But isn't there a way to express that nuance without freezing?
Not in the beginning. And it's because of cognitive load theory.
Oh, back to the buffering.
Right.
Yeah.
If you try to translate a massive, highly nuanced thought with multiple dependent clauses and subtle tone shifts from your native language into a new one, you instantly trigger the mental translation trap.
The processing load is simply too high.
You buffer. You freeze. By forcing yourself to distill that complex thought into a simple, direct concept, you guarantee that you can actually get the words out of your mouth. You keep the conversation alive.
So I have to accept sounding a bit basic for a while just to maintain momentum.
Yes. And the text points out that it's only by mastering those simple concepts that you build the capacity to unlock what they call massive vocabulary power words.
Oh, right, the power words.
They list specific examples in the text. Fluently, appreciate, challenging, progress, and confidence.
Good words.
You can't deploy these advanced power words effectively if you're constantly stumbling over basic sentence structure. The simple concepts form the concrete foundation that allows the complex vocabulary to eventually shine.
Right.
You have to build the frame of the house before you can paint the walls.
That heavy focus on incremental foundational progress leads right into the actionable challenge they give at the end of day 2.
Yes, the homework.
The homework is twofold. First, do shadowing practice by rewatching the material, which essentially means listening and repeating out loud over and over to build that mouth muscle memory. And second, write one single sentence using the power word progress.
It's a brilliant encapsulation of the entire lesson. It demands immediate deployment, relies on a simple concept, incorporates a power word, and reinforces the mindset of comparing yourself only to yesterday.
It hits all the marks.
But stepping back from just language learning, whether you're trying to learn a new programming language, mastering a new instrument, or prepping for a high-stakes public speaking engagement, the core principles here are completely universal.
The mechanics of the freeze are the same no matter what the topic is.
Exactly. Bypassing the translation trap, whatever that cognitive bottleneck looks like in your specific field, by relying on simple concepts and prepackaged scripts.
Yeah.
Building physical muscle memory in small, consistent 5-minute increments. You stop trying to reinvent the wheel from scratch every single time you open your mouth, and you start relying on the solid pre-built blocks you've already formed.
Which leaves me with one final thought to mull over.
Okay.
We've established that using prepackaged scripts and relying on muscle memory allows us to bypass the massive mental buffering required in a second language.
Right.
But if that's true, if scripts are really that incredibly efficient for the human brain, it makes you wonder how much of our everyday communication, even in our native language, is actually just us running on automatic scripts.
Oh, wow.
Think about the conversations you had today. The small talk in the elevator, the meeting updates, the texts to your friends. How many of those interactions were just well-worn subroutines rather than you formulating a truly original thought?
That is a wild thought.
Are we just walking algorithms deploying pre-recorded phrases most of the day? It definitely reframes what it means to actually speak your mind. We hope this deep dive gave you some new tools to break through your own mental buffering. Whatever skill you're trying to master, keep building that muscle memory.